Today's scripture reading is taken from the book of 2 Kings, chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. Now this has been several years after the kingdom of Israel had been divided into two nations, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And at this time, we are nearing the end of the northern kingdom of Israel. It would be only a few years after this is when it would be taken over by Assyria. And the kingdom of Judah would probably in about the next century after this is when it would be taken into Babylonian captivity. And at this time, Isaiah was a prophet of the southern kingdom of Judah. In the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, Ahaz, son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. Unlike David his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and even sacrificed his son in the fire, following the detestable ways of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the high places, on the hilltops, and under every spreading tree.
Thank you, Jack. Good morning. It is a holiday weekend, and it shows, but I'm glad you're here. If you weren't here, it would just be me, and that would be a bummer. We're glad to have you here today. Good to have some guests with us today. Some of you I've met, others of you I haven't, but hope to get a chance to. And I encourage you to linger around and allow us to enjoy your company, and I hope that the morning blesses you today. Go ahead and turn your Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 18. Chapter 18. And let me go ahead and mention two classes that were started. What About Angels on Wednesday night that I've mentioned before, and Stan, of course, did a good job mentioning also the theology of the Old Testament being taught by Ray Newton and Wes Cunningham. And it is a good class, and I concur with what Stan's assessment is of the class. It's good. It's a good class. Why don't you stand up and greet somebody near you? I have a good friend who I haven't seen in a long time, and you can tell, if the picture's up there, you can tell it was a long time ago. That jacket was in style during that period of time. But he grew up in the low rent district of South Minneapolis, and it was a rough part of town, and in order to survive there, you had to become tough, and he was a tough guy. His family never did have much. His dad was not good at managing money or even knowing how to spend it wisely. And as a result of that, my friend Bob, his growing years was lacking in a lot of the normal necessities of life. He grew up very, very poor. His home was in the rubble of Minneapolis South Side. Bob was the very first one in his family to go to college. And he majored in accounting. And the reason he majored in accounting was because he wanted to learn how to use whatever he did have to its fullest. An additional enrichment in his life was he met a fine young Christian woman who became his wife. And his new wife and his new faith only multiplied his resolve to rise above the rubble. Graduating from college, Bob took a job at kind of the bottom of the accounting department of one of the grocery chains that was all throughout Minnesota during that era. I don't think it exists anymore. It was folded into some other company. But he worked hard, and he learned as much as he could along the way. In matters of accounting, he was conservative, just very much along the lines of his boss. Decisions that he made proved to be wise decisions, and so he he gained favor with his boss, his employer. Gradually, he worked himself higher and higher in the company until eventually he was in charge of the total financial management of both the company and his employer's personal fortune. While investing for the company and for his employer, he also invested from his own meager savings as well. When he was 30 years old, he gathered together some of his closest friends to celebrate. He had achieved his childhood goal. His goal was to be a millionaire by the age of 30. Now, I don't want to give you the wrong idea. Bob was not a selfish person. In fact, he was one of the most selfless, generous individuals I've ever met. In fact, from the word go, I found him to be astonishing generous and an individual who had a very good attitude toward money. However, this goal that he set for himself was simply a measuring point at which he could measure his climb out of the rubble. Whenever I attempt to address the subject of family life, and that's what I'm going to be doing for the next several weeks, I usually have somebody come to me, usually several come to me in the course of the series. First of all, expressing appreciation that I'm dealing with such vital issues, with the hopes that some of our young people will gain principles and values that will help them to make wise decisions and give them a bright future, allowing them to avoid some of the tragedies that are common in our day. But often those same individuals come expressing a sadness or regret that it's too late for them. Their own childhood was too dysfunctional for them ever to hope to have any kind of good, sound home life of their own. A home life that they would dream of, but they can only dream of it for others. Or they've so blown it themselves that now they sense that they have to just make do and be content with the dysfunction and the breakage of their home life as it is. It's for this reason that I've chosen this very unlikely two-party text. The first text we've already read, it's about Ahaz from 2 Kings chapter 16. And so we'll move on to the second text. It's about his son. And it comes from 2 Kings 18. In the third year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made, for up to that point, the Israelites had been burning incense to it. They called it the Nehushtan. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him in all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. He held fast to the Lord and did not cease to follow him. He kept the commands the Lord had given Moses. What I want you to see is that it's true, one's past can handicap one. And I think all of us know that, but it's true. We may indeed be all created equal, but the truth is some of us are more equal than others. An individual who was reared among the clean and orderly house has an advantage over one who grew up amidst filth and disorder, as far as at least keeping a good house themselves. The one has an advantage over the other, just naturally speaking. An individual who grew up in a house of achievers is more likely to succeed academically and vocationally than one who is a part of a third generation on the welfare rolls. And an individual who was reared in a nurturing home of faith has an advantage over the one who was reared amidst the stench of ignorance and bitterness and unbelief. Now, that's not to say that that individual cannot become a person of faith, but that individual is at a terrible disadvantage, and we need to understand that. Ahaz was one of the worst kings that ever ruled over Judah, one of the absolute worst. Not only was he religiously unfaithful to the Lord, but he completely closed the doors of the temple. I mean, he shut it down. He became so entangled with the paganism of the nations around him that he burned one of his own sons on the altar as a sacrifice to Molech, one of the pagan deities. In addition to all that, his reign was a disaster, both economically and politically. He created alliances with neighboring nations that would haunt his people and be a plague upon them for generations to come. He was not a good king. Hezekiah, on the other hand, was Ahaz's son. Morally and religiously, he was horribly disadvantaged. But Hezekiah was not merely less wicked than his dad. He was exceptionally righteous in the way he ruled the land. He was an individual who was almost an ideal in that regard. In the very first month of his reign, he opened the temple again. He called the people back to God to make commitment to God. He renewed a covenant himself with God, and he kept that covenant. He proceeded to tear down the high places, the altars that were set up to worship pagan deities, and he also tore down the unauthorized altars that had been set up to God. He challenged his people with these words. He said, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged because the king of Assyria and the vast army with him, for there is a greater power with us than with him. With him is only the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles." And then the text goes on to say, and the people gained confidence from what Hezekiah, the king of Judah, said. Of Hezekiah, the historian writes, Hezekiah trusted the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. So what does all this mean? If one can dream a higher dream, one can walk a higher road. Perhaps the greatest handicap of a broken past is the inability to see beyond the rubble. That is the greatest handicap. The young woman who was reared amidst filth knows only filth. She may see pictures in magazines of glamorous homes, but they're not for her. They're beyond her reach. They're for other folks. Oh, she may have fantasies, but not dreams, not likely. You see, it's not something that she considered possible for herself because her background so saturates her life. However, if she can come to the point that she does dream, then something better is also possible in her life. But she first of all must reach a point where she can dream of something better. Of course, this principle applies to other areas than just housekeeping. It's also true in the field of academics, it's true of economics, it's true of vocation, it's true of equality, it's true of human rights, it's true of righteousness, and it is true of family life. If you can dream of having a healthier family, then you're a long way toward the goal of realizing one. But you first of all must be able to dream it as a possibility. And sometimes the very disadvantage that you see as a strike against you can provide the impetus and the arena that makes success possible. Hezekiah not only had the disadvantage of being reared by a very evil father, But he also had the advantage of seeing firsthand what evil is like. So in the context of that disadvantage, there was also an advantage. My friend not only suffered the disadvantage of being reared amidst poverty and waste and mismanagement, but he also had the advantage of knowing firsthand how he did not want to live. And that provided the impetus that gave his future potential. You may be stooping under the burden of dysfunction or brokenness or alcoholism or unaffectionate or codependent family lifestyle from your childhood. But if so, that also means that you come into adulthood with the awareness of how bad it can get and what you do not want your life to be. So in the context of that disadvantage, there is also an advantage. I can say without qualification that some of the best couples that I've had the privilege to work with in premarital counseling have been individuals that come out of very unhappy and broken homes. You see, they realize that happiness does not come automatically. They recognize the importance of laying a good foundation, and they are firm in their determination of what they want to avoid. And so out of the background of their disadvantage, there's also to be an advantage if they take advantage of it. Now, in addition to all that, at the heart of the gospel is the word anew. Do you hear that? At the heart of the gospel is the word anew. Everything I've said up to this point could be explained from a purely naturalistic point of view. The same principles that apply to housekeeping also apply to study habits or hygiene or economics or religion or family life. And they work very much the same. But the Christian, however, is not limited to the resources of the naturalistic point of view. The central message of the cross is that you can start over today. I mean, that's what the cross is about. That's what its message is about. You may not be able to undo your broken past, but you don't have to remain forever chained to it either. God can make you new, and God can make your home new. You can learn how to be a better mate, a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, a better father, mother, or child. You can grow in your family lifestyle. You can take steps that will prevent past mistakes from reliving themselves in the future. You can lay foundation that will go a long way toward promising you success. You can nurture your home and the resources in such a way that they bring healing and build and lift up rather than destroy and bring pain and tear down. And you can do regular maintenance in your family life so as to keep it healthy and strong. But it will not happen automatically. It must be intentional. And with a determination and a strong intention, that can be your future too. Now, over the next several weeks, I want to be talking a little bit about these relationships. Because it's true, they're important. They're important not only to us personally in our own well-being and happiness, but they're also important to the world in which we live in, the community that we're part of, the church that we collectively make up. May God bless us to set our minds to have that which is good and that which is healthy by recognizing the cross promises us with the word anew. You need to respond this morning by confessing Jesus Christ is your Lord and by being buried with Him in baptism. The water's ready. Be glad to do that today. Or maybe you've already done that. You know that your heart is not right this morning. If it's something that needs to be corrected just between you and God, then by all means keep it private, but take care of it today. But if it's something that you would like the church to walk with you through and to stand with you in, we encourage you to come and let us know what the need is as you stand and sing. Sometimes there's a question that haunts people's minds after they've struggled in their family life. When they're hurting, when they feel lost, when they feel failure. And the question is can my family ever glorify God? And I'm here to tell you today, yes, it can. And I want to challenge you to read your word and to recognize that the cross assures you that yes, it can. Because you are able to start from this day on with a new beginning. And God can cleanse what is broken. He can heal what is sick. But you must take it to Him.